Thanks everyone for joining. I know it's a Saturday and also good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever you are joining from. I'm very excited. This topic is particularly very uh, close to my heart because it's a journey that I'm going to share, and I hope some of the things that I'm going to share today is helpful for navigating your academic journey and your path going forward. So again, uh, Rohit already introduced me. My name is Gaurav. I'm assistant professor in precision agriculture at Kansas State University. In my lab, digital agronomy research team, or DART, we focus primarily on precision agriculture technologies. We work on precision water management, precision nutrient management using remote sensing and proximal sensing techniques. So I'll briefly highlight about things that we do here, but my goal here as Rohit and I discussed, we were brainstorming what would be the most impactful idea to share today would be like different tools and tips that we are seeing from both, we have seen from both ends, and we are also seeing from the other side of the table. So hopefully we can share some tips that you start applying in your journey as you apply for graduate school or you apply for postdoc or faculty positions in future. So again, I like this quote. It's not a sprint, it's more of a marathon. It's sorry. Yeah, if it's you are running, but you definitely have to make a space out of it, and it's very important that pace also allows you to acquire all the skill sets that you navigate, like gather across as you're running through that marathon. All right, so my goal here is to highlight a little bit about my journey and my program at KSU. And again, during my journey, we all make mistakes, right? Nobody is perfect. So I'll highlight on some of those mistakes that I have made and how those mistakes have helped me out in moving further in my career. I'll talk about applications and setting goals in graduate school or even before graduate schools. There are some short-term and long-term goals that we all should have as we are navigating the academic journey. I'll talk about building a profile for academia or any job, basically. As we advance in our career, the biggest question that comes to any graduate student is whether you want to go to industry or whether you want to go to academia. Most of the skill sets remain the same, but there's like slight differences and slight approach of research and development for both sectors. So I'll highlight on some of those things as well. There's also a very important piece. I believe like the current world that we are living in is totally dependent upon networking and interdisciplinary research. So I'll briefly highlight on some of those things. Why you should not be like sitting in the more like corner office or in a shell that's not allowing. We all have to break that shell at certain point of time and interact in a conference that we are going or with peers that we are working along with. I'll talk about some of the job application strategies, and my goal is not to say the same things that you might have heard from a lot of other people, but I'll highlight what there are a few things I took some risks and did some differently. So I'll highlight a few things on that, and then what it is to be on a transitioning to an academic role. And the last part is basically, when we are in graduate school, nobody tells us like there are way more things than research, teaching, or extension that you'll be doing. There's also like people aspect. There is many different. You'll be building your team, or you'll be building up with different people. So transitioning to an academic role is also training yourself in the managerial aspects. So again, I'm originally from the eastern part of India. Uh, if some of you know have heard about Jharkhand, I'm originally from Ranchi, uh, and I did my bachelor's from Vishwabharati University, which is in West Bengal, and then I did my master's from Punjab Agricultural University. Then I moved to the United States in 2016, and I went to New Mexico State University and did my PhD there. And after finishing up my PhD, I briefly took a halt and I had that same confusion that I highlighted on industry versus academia. I was wanting to go to academia always, but then I got an offer from industry and I wanted to explore that industry aspects of like outreach, research, and how it happens. I really enjoyed it, but again, as I was wanting to go into academia always, I moved forward with my postdoctoral position and went to UC Davis for my postdoc, and then started my faculty position, the first faculty position as assistant research professor in Montana State. and then moved to a tenure track position at my current position at Kansas State University. So before I move on to some of my research areas that I have explored, I do want to highlight particularly this aspect of my research or academic journey because I feel I really got lucky to work in the indigenous or Native American communities, which is called Navajo Nation. It's one of the largest tribe of the United States in the southwestern part of the country. So I worked with the Navajo farmers. My research was primarily there was like a mine spill, and I really was got excited about this research because growing up I saw like my dad who worked in like a mining areas. We did see all of these issues prevalent in India, but how, like and all of those contaminants coming into the like plant system, water system. But again, there are so many aspects of contamination going to different levels. So my research was using different proximal sensors and geostatistical techniques to map the contamination that was flowing. Keeping the scientific part apart, uh, again, I said, this part of my journey was basically a turning point because the Navajo farmers allowed me to learn how to communicate your research. So the painting I showed like in my other world, when I have time, I do some painting. So that's the painting I tried to portray what I heard from the Navajo. There was an old lady sharing the three sister cropping, which is how different cropping system integrates into uh, enriching the nutrients, support, and all of those systems. So when I presented my results that there's a contamination is flowing, this is what is in your plants, this is what is in your river, based upon all the analysis that I did, it was I presented in English and then it was translated in Dene to help the community bring in all of the analogy to understand the results and then continue the agricultural aspects. So the big part was after the mine spill, the agriculture completely stopped in the area. So my goal was to help the community to revert back to the agricultural sectors. So I felt communication was very important. And I learned it during with a very different community. Like when we see United States, it's all about Los Angeles, New York, or like skyscrapers. But it was a totally different community that I worked who taught me how to communicate results. And we have to speak the language that that community understands. So again, like I come from a very different backgrounds. It's more of an interdisciplinary strategies. Scholars in my lab, graduate student in my labs, the way we are building up a program, it's more, I have a diverse group of agronomists, soil scientists, agriculture engineers, and data scientists. So my background was primarily in soil science back in India. And I was integrating soil chemistry, which was more on a salinity aspects of the arid climate of India and tying it with soil water engineering. When I got to the United States, I was understanding more of a systems approach and rapidly analyzing soil samples or plant samples using proximal sensors in the field. So I tried to marry both of these angles and understand agronomy as a system approach. And then I started use different geostatistical techniques so that I had it right. My advisor was not a geostatistician, but I always got that support to learn and like all of the resources to apply and integrate into these research. So I felt like anything that we want to do, we always have those support of great mentors, and finding those great mentors is not easy. So every time I ask my students, like when they're interviewing for different positions or uh, and they like often we get very nervous about the interviews. We are only preparing that what our answers are going to be, but we forget in that aspect that there's also that if we are getting selected, we also have to go and work with those people. So it's also our responsibility to interview those people, how the work environment or what are their mentoring strategies and what approach they have for research and also the human aspect of the laboratory. So again, talking about Kansas, I am located exactly in the center of the country. So this is the center of the United States, and Kansas is having one of the largest cropping areas. So it's all agriculture. If you want to see different like crops, like some of the major crops of United States, like corn, soybean, alfalfa, this is where Kansas. Kansas is a perfect place to be in. So I'm glad to be in this place and surrounded by agriculture all around. So the town that we are in is called Manhattan. It's a little university town, and the the way I mean, I've heard or I've learned about the state is basically calling it as a living laboratory. You can find a gradient of irrigated as well as dryland agriculture. You can find an elevation from 600 to 1200 meters. You can find rainfall gradient from drought in one part of the states to heavy rainfall from to the other part of the states. So there are a lot of opportunities that my group avail, and with precision agriculture, we always look for variability. So nothing better than that when you have a state like this. So we work on a lot of different data sets. We work on field level data sets. We collect soil test values, compaction, electrical conductivity values, like understanding what soil properties could be analyzed on site and how can we tie those layers with other that soil data with other layers of canopy parameters, crop level data like yield monitors, remote sensing, or geospatial data. And we also have environmental state like data weather stations that we tie with the local weather to understand how our algorithms that we are developing is impacted by but certain kind of weather to be applied in a farmer's field. So we work with different data sets. I call it like definitely big data sets. We try to interpret those with different technologies, tools that we have, and we try to help the farmers to make decision out of those data. That's the basic crux of my program. Some of the important projects that are there that are funded by different agencies and different graduate students, postdocs have been helping out in conducting and coordinating this research are I'll highlight some things on that. So we are working on precision irrigation system. These are some of the new technologies. These are not widely adopted in United States yet. So we are focusing on the radar-based irrigation system. We have a radar in front of a pivot irrigation. We try to understand moisture and do some variable rate irrigation there. We have different computer controlled irrigation system that as we are planting the corn based upon those algorithms, we try to apply water understanding the soil layers, the remote sensing layers, and the canopy parameters as well. So basically, the goal is with understanding variability and comparing the data, how much amount of water is applied and what systems are efficient. We also work and combine different layers. This project is funded by United States Department of Agriculture. We're trying to do computational approaches of different ground sensors, canopy sensors, aerial sensors, and develop computational approach for managing water of one of the most important issues that is happening not just for Kansas, but many states in the United States. We have an aquifer called Ogallala Aquifer. It's depleting, and the water is not being replenished at the same rate as it's being extracted from that aquifer. So our goal is to develop precision irrigation technologies and apply those technologies to save as much water we can. And alfalfa is one of the most economic crops, so we targeted on working on it. We also work on hyperspectral techniques, so understanding different spectral signatures for early detection of stress. That is what my lab's goal is at this point. We are trying to understand, we use drone platforms and the similar ground truth platform conducting greenhouse, field experiments and all, and also tying both of those algorithms together. I mentioned about the interdisciplinary team. This is an example of the project that we are involved with and funded by NSF. And most of our projects are not oriented towards research, but also towards development of student development and all, and also training them for the next steps of the faculty. Not going to talk too much about my research. I also teach some courses, which is on Introduction to Precision Ag, Site-Specific Ag, and also developing a graduate course, mostly integrating machine learning applications for agronomic data analytics. All right, so coming to the point on the academic structure. So when you're looking into a faculty positions or you're looking to into a laboratory to apply for a PhD or a master's position, we do need to understand that position, like faculty members are having different kinds of appointment. So one is there's a division of research, teaching, and extension. So a lot of faculty have research appointments and they have an active research laboratory, and they also teach courses. But a lot of universities have extension appointments. So most of the land grant universities, that means you'll be hearing about these land grant terms while navigating the universities. They have three different pillars: research, teaching, and extension. So while application, we also have to be mindful of whether we enjoy research and teaching more, or whether we enjoy going out to the farmers and talking about our research more extension. What kind of balance you have? So every position has different split. For example, my position is research and teaching. I have a heavy research position, and then I also teach some courses every semester. Some people have heavy extension position, and they have some research position. So they go out and are mostly interacting with the farmers, helping the farmers. The research that is being done in the university, that is, they're helping out to translate that out to the community. So when you're navigating the faculty or a laboratory, it's important to understand what is the primary focus for that lab, and what kind of positions would you be wanting to go for. For people applying for tenure and non, like for a faculty position, it's also divided into tenure and non-tenure track positions. So often tenure track positions, the only difference is like for tenure track positions, I mean, you have a long, consistent term. You're appointed as a faculty and you're a member of that community. Non-tenure track have some fixed term. Uh, it might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but there are opportunities to be renewed or continue your position based upon the availability of funding in those universities. A lot of faculty members, a lot of younger faculty, like try to apply for non-tenure track positions as a stepping stone, so that it gives them independence to write their own grants and get into the academic world and take some training. Right. So I mentioned about setting some goal in graduate school. So every semester when I'm mentoring my graduate students here, we always set some short-term goals, and we also set long-term goals. Just understanding like what is their research milestones, how much have they achieved. It's very important to encourage yourself and pat your back, like how much you have achieved coming along the way, right? People who are currently in India, like if you are thinking about graduate school, you might have done a lot of work that aligns, that has given you confidence to apply. So it's important to write those down. What are your milestones? What have you achieved? What skill sets have you acquired that ties to a particular lab that you are trying to apply? So those research milestones are important. So we reflect on that, but we also try to, what is the goal for next 6 months? What is the goal? And then we also try to highlight what are the goals for long-term aspects, like where do we want to end up? Like what are some skill sets? Do we need a crop modeling workshop? Do we need to collaborate with like scientist X sitting in University of California or some other places? So those kind of small milestones and goals are important. There's also publication targets. I'll talk about publications in a little bit. Those are important in every stage. Uh, and then there's also some kind of teaching experiences. Often, like not all of us get that opportunity to teach a course or establish or develop a course, but there are opportunities that people are looking for guest lectures. During my grad school, I was trying to look for opportunities like where I would ask a faculty, hey, I'm very interested in your course and I have this topic. Would you be interested, like if I design a guest lecture for your class? And I did get a lot of positive responses, and I had the opportunity to do guest lectures in those courses. There's also professional development aspects. There's no boundaries or limits for professional development. But one thing important is if you're wanting to go, for example, in soil health, what are some of the key things that you need for research skill sets? But then there's another aspects. What are some of the things that you need for communicating that aspects? Or when you're interviewing, what are some of the things you need for professionally stand out than other candidates? There are societies that we get part of. In the United States, we have American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, Soil Science Society of America. There are other societies which are highly prominent for entomology, weed science. So any area that you're interested in, there is always a society in any part of the world. So it's very important to be connected to those societies, those professional links. People interested in hydrology and other, there's a group called SIAHI that is, they are coordinating a lot of activities, and a lot of people are involved and just sharing opportunities in the United States or in like other parts of the world, conferences and like collaboration invitation for papers. So these are the areas which help you get exposure to what is available. So again, we do have to prioritize often, like what we want to do, like 6 months, uh, 6 months or 5 years down the lane, what are our priorities? Where do we want to see ourselves? But it's also important to be a little bit flexible. Often with academic route, if we are rigid, okay, I have to go into that lab and I have to do that particular research, it is possible, but you also have to be flexible in terms of like your goals, your areas, because the position comes when it has an opening, right? So I'll talk in a little bit. And regular reviews are important. While back in India, I was trying to make connections with my seniors who are back here. Nowadays, like LinkedIn has a strong connection. You can email them directly and try to make those connections. It's not like often people ask, hey, do you have a position? Can I apply into your lab? Those are not a good signs for initiating those conversations. But a good conversation starts with highlighting on, hey, I read your paper and I'm interested in this area, trying to tell that person that this is my interest and I'm trying to develop. Can you help me develop my CV? And can I share my CV with you? Would you have some time to give me comments? Can I share my letters with you? And I got a lot of help from some of the seniors who were like in the United States and different universities. So again, I want to highlight the science behind. There's a good quote. Individuals who commit their goals to papers are 33 to 42% more likely to achieve them compared to those who merely conceptualize their goals. So basically, this is what I was trying to highlight on when I said writing down your goals are pretty important, and reflecting back what we have achieved is very important to move forward. Uh, when we I have a template for my lab. When we do that, I also ask my students when use these, and it's also useful for me to use when we highlight our annual achievements from the lab. I just extract from there. Also, the students extract those information for their purposes for drafting their award applications or like applications for different places. So it's always when you're regularly reflecting on in a written documentation, it gives you a strong motivation as well. So I'll talk very briefly about publications. I think it's very important to publish. That's what we have always been like hearing up, yes. But it also depends upon what stage you are in. Uh, People do not expect as an undergraduate, if you're not conducting any research, if you're not heavily involved in any research, you're not expected to publish. But if you have shown any publications record, that stands out. But it's any kind of writing format is important at that stage. So when your application is kind of evaluated, whether you are in a final year of your PhD, of one or two publications that stands out amongst the other candidates that are applying for a postdoc or a faculty position. If you are in advanced stage of your postdoc, people look at how many years have you spent in the research, and how many publications have you demonstrated in terms of quality and impact of your research. So often I've seen people like picking up one topic and publishing many papers out of that same topic. That's not the most ethical way to do things. It's very important to focus on quality of the research, not just the quantity. So we need to aim for a balance between the impactful journal and then those more focused on niche topics. It might be somebody is working on, let's say, soil fungi or something related to satellite. The communities might be very restricted, very limited on a particular topic, but it's very important for you to be connected to that community, and journals are the same way as well. So impact factor, often in India, we have this NAS rating. It's a measure of how frequently articles in a journal are cited. So again, lower impact factor does not mean necessarily the journal is bad. If you look into most of the big society journals, their impact factors are pretty low. But it's also important. I have been told by my mentors that it's also important to publish in your society journals because those readers are the most critical readers you'll find in your area. So it's important and it's reputable to be publishing in within your society, within your areas. And even if they have lower impact factor, it does not matter at any stage of your life. But yes, it's very like often when you talk to your friends from biology, chemistry, or some of the fundamental sciences, they would be talking about impact factor as high as 20. And I got so nervous when I kept hearing about that I'm not even targeting for like more than 10 at this point of time. So I think it's not that's not how things work. We have to understand how big the community or how narrow your research area is and or how big it is, and depending upon that, you apply or you find a journal to publish your article. So there are student grants and fellowships. I'll not highlight too much on this, but at any stage of life, there are fellowship. Often a lot of the societies nowadays, ASABE, which is for agriculture and biological engineers, in the United States, Tri-Cities, there are fellowships that support people from India to come to the conferences. There are like so many programs by different departments in India with by Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Uh, I hosted a couple of undergraduate students from India within my lab uh, for last 2 years. There was a program by World Bank where exchange students would come from different universities from India and would spend time with a faculty member here. So there are a lot of opportunities that could be navigated. Often, most of the universities in India are now trying and striving hard to develop collaborations, and there are some productive collaborations, and vice versa. There are like even US universities have opportunities, have already developed ties with different universities. So when you reach out to faculty members in those universities, they already know, they already have experienced students from your universities, and that route is always up there. So there's also, as I mentioned, about teaching. As we are developing uh, during our graduate school, uh, you often like some of the labs primarily focus on research, and that's not how it should be. When you are like doing some research, it also needs to be translated. The concept behind your research also needs to be shared. So how you share it depends upon what makes you a good teacher. And every time I mean, it has taken me a while now to get to learn about the teaching pedagogy. There is a society that I strongly recommend. If you are within the United States and you're interested in teaching, I would strongly recommend this society, like being part of that. Like, this is like people coming from different areas of agriculture and talking about teaching pedagogy. Like, what are some of the like examples or what are some of the strategies to teach? But for me, when I start teaching a course, I always think about the really good soil physics lecture that I had in Punjab Agriculture University or the Professor X, like thinking about all the good teachers, all the best teachers who comes into your mind with that first thought. I think and then I think about what was the method that they were using. And every time I think about it, it's all about engaging the students. I was engaged in that class and I was not dozing off in a back bench somewhere. So it was very useful for me to understand their strategies, and then I try to implement that both in my extension talk as well as uh, in my teaching aspects. So the moment you talk to, I really like to talk to a live audience. And the moment I talk to the live audience, it's always I start up with some questions, and those are some important ways to engage your audience. So even in your industry roles, these are, I mean, your ability to communicate and teach complex ideas is valued. You're having a product that you have to develop and like pitch an idea to your team. You need to know how to communicate and what are the primary strategies to hit that can convince somebody about the product. So any documenting, any teaching workshops, you might have done like several workshops, anything that you're getting as an email or a registration or anything that you have achieved as out of that workshop, those certifications though are important and should go on your CV. So again, extension, I mentioned about the Navajo Nation. So my extension experience started up there. I honestly, when for me, extension was another department in a, like while I was in India, I just thought of it as a, oh, it's another department that talks to the farmers and they have their own program. But in the United States, most of the universities, extension is tied within the program, and it's kind of, and they, like for example, in Kansas State University, in my department here in Department of Agronomy, we have agronomy extension integrated within the department, but also interacting with the university and with the state. So we have different commissions for soybean for the state, for corn. So extension allows us to bridge those gap and come and translate our message to what is important, what kind of research is important right now, what research are we doing right now, what are the outputs that are going out. So basically, I do a lot of extension talks. I do not have an official extension appointment, but I enjoy talking to the farmers. I serve on different advisory boards, and my goal is to simplify jargons. We often like, so often when I was, here's an example. When I was sharing my results about some contamination, I was using milligram per kilogram, like that's the unit, or parts per million that we use in the lab. But nobody cares what those units are, right? Like when you're going out, you start talking about numbers, you just lose your audience at that point if you're not trying to give analogy. So we start coming up with an example. So if you see that graph, like the parts per billion, we started explaining one drop in 250 water barrels. And the reason to take the example of water barrels was basically to, like, even now in Navajo Nation, they have barrels, and to collect drinking water, they would go out with those barrels and fill those water. So we thought this example, they are seeing this every day. Let's use this example, and it started creating a difference. It's also important about the terminologies. A lot of terminologies are different for arsenic, lead. These were some of the contaminations we were discussing about in our maps and geostatistics and all of those things. So we started using the local terminologies, partnering with, there's a Dene College in the indigenous communities, and they helped us translate the messages that the community would understand. So it's very important to simplify those jargons, develop analogies, and also understand the language that your audience is going to be understand, like, I mean, interpreting or would be absorbing. So there's also different leadership and service, particularly for people who are trying to navigate their academic journey. There are a lot of leadership and service, and this particularly stands for students who are already in United States and trying to understand, like, be part of. So it's important. Often, I see a lot of graduate students think. I mean, I was involved heavily in a lot of leadership opportunities in my grad school, and oftentimes I felt really confused that whether I'm doing in the right track. Just seeing all my friends being in the lab, but I felt I did not have very strong communication skills back when I came in India, but being serving on a lot of these committees, serving on a lot of those graduate student council, or as a graduate student senator and all of those, there are different opportunities that you can avail and pitch your voice. So keeping your ideas, keeping standing out, or supporting the community that you are in is very important. Similarly, for postdoctoral students, there are postdoctoral association. Often, a lot of universities do not have those associations, but there is a National Postdoctoral Scholars Association that you can be part of, and that community is strongly aiming for professional developments for postdocs within the US. So serving on different communities are very important, even being part of a voluntary committees that are like people who are striving something like this, like striving to support the communities for example, I said about Syahi hydrology. People are looking for volunteers to support that, and those are growing every day. So that's basically your leadership and service to the society. So there are professional societies. If you are in the US, like tribe societies or agronomy, crops, and soil societies, those have a lot of opportunities. And NACTA, as I mentioned, that's the teaching society that has a lot of opportunities. Ag and bioengineering, like if you're in those areas, they have, and there are many societies that you can navigate any field you are in. You will find a place for you to serve and sharpen your leadership skills. So I mentioned about the job application packet. I do want to take a minute and highlight on different stages why this is important. So often when you're applying for, you're emailing. When I was sitting in India, I was emailing different professors, and I have made like a lot of mistakes, like emailing just initially just having the same template, and then and then I talk to my seniors what works out best. So basically, you have to find what areas you are interested in, and for example, I was trying to look for something in sensors and all of those things, find a paper for that, and then read that paper. What is the crux of that paper that you're finding? And do not, and if you're looking for a very senior faculty, look for their most current papers rather than looking into 20 years down the lane. They might not be working in those areas, and their lab has advanced to a totally different point, and that at a like so looking into the more recent papers from a particular lab is important. And when you're drafting your letter, just drafting your email, so you can just write down, hey, I read your paper and I really found that the technique that you're using is pretty interesting. So my area lies in this, and I'm trying to apply for different positions. I would appreciate if you have any positions available, or if you can direct me in a strong directions. Often the reply, if you are sending a lot of emails, there won't be replies, or there won't be, uh, a positive response. So it's not to be disheartened or have any hard feelings about it. You still want to end those or close those emails in a healthy way. So just it's very important to close in a positive note that thank you so much for your response. I'll keep an eye out if the position comes in your lab, and I'll reach out to the person if they have a recommendation. So that's pretty important. When it comes down to like graduate school positions, like for example, if you are in a graduate school in the United States applying for postdoc or applying for a faculty position being a postdoc, uh, what I've, I just took an example from my faculty position. I did write a cover letter which had 3 points. Basically, my area, basically what are my grit, what are my strengths, what are the areas like who do I network or collaborate with, what agencies, and what have I done in terms of publication and grant acquisition. So grant acquisition is more when you're applying as a postdoc to a faculty position. So those 3 points, my cover letter was half a page. And then I used my second page basically as additional. It could be a part of a cover page or a research statement. For this is what I did for Kansas State. I just try to understand what are the areas, what are the needs that are to be addressed. And then I did precision agriculture deals with spatial and temporal scales, so I picked up a spatial scale and tried to understand at what scales and what areas I would be working. Then I tied my research expertise and future directions in a framework rather than writing too many lines. So I got good positive response after I interviewed. I got positive response about it. Like uh, people don't like to read too much because out of 70, 80 applications or even more, you're not going to read like every application's every line. It's not possible. So people are skimming up. So the more strategies you use to navigate or hit on the points that you want the reader to read, it's very important to do it that way. So that's why I thought I'll do it this way. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It worked out. And that's why I'm here at Kansas State University. And I would, even if you're like having all of those like things that you want to mention in writing, I would still suggest some kind of short framework to be used for your research statement. Teaching philosophy is important. Every teacher is different, and those philosophies matter. For example, exemplary teaching, using examples for your teaching, or just taking your students out. What do you use? How do you want your students to be learning? Some of those examples are important. If you've got a positive feedback as an evaluation of your teaching, those are very important to be highlighted. Extension philosophy in a similar way, like how do you want to interact with your farmers, and some of the examples, for example, if you're posting on a Twitter, how much is your Twitter or X, how much is your outreach? If you're posting on LinkedIn, like how much is your outreach? So those evaluation metrics are also important. How many people are responding to it, or what is the positive outcome of even just a single article that you have read? There's also like DEI statements for a lot of universities have. It's basically how inclusive you are for people coming from different backgrounds, different areas, how inclusive you are. So examples of those aspects are also important. So uh, I'll probably like this last part I want to highlight on tips and training. I wish someone told me about during my grad school, or I wished I was observing it more closely what a faculty member does. So when you transition to an academic role, I like to say it's basically a management position without having an actual management degrees. So until now, you learn a lot of skill sets, you do a research, but as you are transitioning to an academic role, it's also important to understand what areas, what are the things you'll be dealing with. So I do recommend few books that I refer to. The professor is in, and I think writing your cover letter up to the point of negotiation is in this book. I use this book a lot, and I use this for drafting my papers. I also am giving it out to all like the students or any talks that I'm trying to go to. I try to recommend this book. So those are useful tips. It's also understand like working with different environments. It's like we all, we all go into an environment, we all work in a team, and the team has many different kind of people, and that brings different kind of issues or a positive outcome. So it's very important to learn from your experiences about those of things. Writing science is very important. I still read, I've read this book, but I still try to read it more often. uh, how to write good proposals, how to write good papers. This is a very important area, important book, and like an area to be polished up to. Often, when we come out from a country where English is not a primary language, uh, I mean, books or trainings like these are very useful. Initially, when I came to the United States, I was writing a lot of words that we use in like British format of English in India, and then it's totally different in the United States. So the more you write, the more you learn from those aspects in of writing and publishing. And then with one of the conferences, that keynote speaker recommended this book, The Four Agreements. I just bought it and I read it. And then I would try to wrap this whole thing up with the four agreements. I really like these quotes. Like whenever in any part of your uh, job area or wherever you are, uh, there are four different agreements that you have to make with yourselves. Be impeccable with your word. Definitely speak with integrity, speak with confidence. And I have learned with my experience, it's not always important to speak. Often you'll go into meetings or anywhere, you will find yourself keeping the quietest person and you didn't utter a single word. And that's totally fine. If you do not need to speak, you do not need to speak. So it's important to be speaking when you are confident and when you are comfortable speaking out. Don't take anything personally. Often, like we start reading in between the lines, so it's important not and like interpreting your own version, but just understand like reading the facts in academic settings are very important, and that leads to a professional aspects of the behavior too. Don't make any assumptions. Like we have to have like questions often, like when you're working in a research as a grad student, as postdoc, it's very important. If you're not clear about the simplest thing, you need to communicate and ask the professor. We do not need to make assumptions. Oh, my professor might have thought this, and then let's just do it and then talk about it like maybe in 1 or 2 weeks. So that's basically, it's important not to do that. It's communication is very important in any settings of academia, industry, wherever you are landing up. Again, always do your best. We are not in our best every day. Like, for example, some days I have something going on in my personal life, and I might not be mentally okay to do perform the best at that day. It's always fine to take a break, to take slow down and communicate, like just understand what's going on and give yourself some time to get back or revert back to your best position. So it's important to understand what makes you, what's in what circumstances you perform well. You do not want to be lingering in a situation where you do not feel mentally appropriate or mentally okay to perform well. So again, just to wrap up, this is my current team. I have postdoc scholars, research scholars, graduate assistants, PhD, masters, and undergraduate research assistants. And I've hosted different lab alumni. So, I mean, we have different lab alumni from places who have spent some time in research in our lab, and we we are happy to host people coming from different backgrounds. So currently, I'm looking for a postdoc position. The advertisement is open, so if you are into precision agriculture, there is an open position, and I'll be happy to chat about it. To learn more about our work, you can go to ksudigitalag.com. And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn or different social Instagram or different social media platform that allows to communicate. With that, I think I'll wrap up. I hope I did not take way too much time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.